The smell of fresh-baked bread and sizzling steaks had been part of Maria's life for the past 15 years at the Grove. This wasn't just any restaurant in downtown Charleston. It was the kind of place where locals celebrated their anniversaries and out-of-towners made reservations months in advance. The crisp white tablecloths and soft jazz music set the mood for what many considered the best fine dining experience in the city. But for Maria, the Grove was more than just a workplace. It was where she discovered her true calling. Sure, she started as a waitress, carrying plates and taking orders, but her eyes were always watching, her mind always learning. She'd notice how Mr. Chen, the owner, would handle tough situations with a calm smile. How he knew exactly when to check on a table and when to give them space. The way he could turn an unhappy customer into a regular with just a few minutes of genuine conversation. Late at night, after the last customers had left and the kitchen staff had gone home, Maria would sit with Mr. Chen, going through the day's numbers. The restaurant business isn't just about good food, he'd tell her, his eyes twinkling with wisdom earned from 30 years in the industry. It's about making memories for people. What the regular customers didn't see was Maria rushing from her afternoon shifts straight to her evening business classes at the local college. Her uniform tucked away in her bag, she'd slide into her seat just as lectures began, often still smelling faintly of the kitchen's famous garlic bread. Her classmates thought she was crazy, working full-time while pursuing her degree, but Maria had a dream bigger than just serving tables. Mr. Chen saw something special in her from day one. He noticed how she remembered every regular customer's favorite wine, how she could spot a wobbly table from across the room, and how she taught new servers with patience and understanding. While other servers came and went, Maria stayed, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. She learned about wine pairings, inventory management, staff scheduling, and the hundreds of little details that make a restaurant run smoothly. The other servers would sometimes tease her about being the teacher's pet, but Maria didn't mind. She knew she was learning something priceless. During busy Saturday nights, when the kitchen was in chaos and reservations were running behind, she'd step in naturally, helping the hosts manage the waiting crowds, coordinating with the kitchen to speed up orders, all while keeping her own tables happy. "You've got the touch," Mr. Chen would say, watching her calm an angry customer or motivate a stressed-out busboy. "You understand that a restaurant is like an orchestra. Every person plays their part, and when it all comes together, it's beautiful." The regulars loved her too. There was the old couple who came every Sunday after church, the busy lawyers who'd rush in for lunch meetings, and the young families celebrating special occasions. To them, Maria wasn't just a waitress. She was part of their celebrations, their traditions, their lives. What none of them knew was that every night, after her shift ended, Maria would sit in her small apartment, surrounded by business textbooks and restaurant management guides. She'd work on her business plan until the early hours of the morning, dreaming of the day she'd have her own place. But for now, she was content learning everything she could from Mr. Chen, who had become more than just a boss. He was her mentor, showing her the ropes of an industry she had grown to love. Little did she know that Mr. Chen had been watching her growth with a purpose in mind. For 15 years, he had been secretly grooming her for something much bigger than being a waitress. The Grove wasn't just her workplace. It was her training ground for a future she couldn't yet imagine. The day everything changed started like any other at the Grove. Maria was helping the morning crew set up for lunch service when Mr. Chen asked her to join him in his office. The small room was filled with old photographs of the restaurant's history, pictures of first-day openings, celebrity visits, and staff celebrations from over the years. Mr. Chen sat behind his desk, his hands folded over a thick folder of papers. "You know," he began, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades of memories, "I opened this place when I was just 25 years old. Everyone said I was too young, too inexperienced. But sometimes, you just know when something feels right." Maria listened, wondering why he was sharing this story now. She'd heard bits and pieces over the years, but never the whole thing. The morning sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow over the office as Mr. Chen continued. "I'm getting old, Maria," he said with a gentle smile. "My wife keeps telling me we should be traveling, seeing the world, spending time with our grandkids. And you know what? For the first time in 30 years, I'm actually considering it." The news hit Maria like a splash of cold water. The Grove without Mr. Chen. It seemed impossible. He was the heart and soul of the place. She watched as he opened the folder, revealing stack after stack of legal documents. "I've been watching you, Maria. For 15 years, I've watched you grow from a nervous new waitress into someone who knows this business inside and out. You've got something special, something that can't be taught in those business classes you've been taking." Maria's heart started beating faster. Was this conversation going where she thought it was going? She gripped the arms of her chair, trying to stay calm. "I've had offers, you know. Big restaurant groups wanting to buy the Grove, turn it into another chain location. But this place, it's more than just a business to me. It's my legacy. And I want someone who understands that to take it over." He slid the folder across the desk. "I want you to buy the Grove, Maria. I've already talked to the bank. With your business degree almost finished and your experience here, they're willing to work with you on the financing. I'll even stay on for a few months to help with the transition." Maria's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Purchase agreements, financial statements, transfer of ownership documents. It was all there. The dream she'd barely dared to whisper to herself was suddenly real, sitting right in front of her. But what about the other investors who've shown interest?" She managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. "Surely they could offer more money." Mr. Chen leaned back in his chair, looking around at the photos on his walls. "Money isn't everything, Maria. I've seen how you treat this place, how you care for our staff and customers. You understand that the Grove isn't just about fancy food and high prices. It's about making people feel special, about creating moments they'll remember forever." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as Mr. Chen continued explaining his plan. He'd been preparing for this moment for years, gradually increasing her responsibilities, teaching her everything he knew about running the restaurant. Even her business classes had been part of his plan. He'd arranged her schedule so she could attend them while working full-time. "Take some time to think about it," he said, standing up and walking to the window. "This is a big decision. But remember, I wouldn't offer this if I wasn't completely sure you were ready." As Maria left the office that day, her mind racing with possibilities, she realized something important. Mr. Chen wasn't just offering her a business. He was trusting her with his life's work. The weight of that trust felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The rest of her shift that day passed in a blur. Every time she walked through the dining room, she saw it with new eyes. This could be hers, all of it. The thought was overwhelming, but somewhere deep inside, she knew she was ready for this challenge. After signing the final papers, Maria faced her biggest decision yet. She sat in what was now her office. The thought still made her dizzy, staring at the staff schedule for the upcoming week. The question wasn't about running the restaurant, it was about how to handle her new role. Most new owners would immediately move into a corner office, wearing fancy suits and only appearing to shake hands with VIP customers. But something about that didn't feel right to Maria. She picked up a pen and twirled it between her fingers, remembering all the lessons she'd learned while waiting tables. "You can't run a restaurant from behind a desk," Mr. Chen had always said. Those words echoed in her mind as she made her decision. She would keep working some shifts as a server. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She knew it was unusual, but it felt right. The next morning, she gathered the staff before opening. Everyone was curious about this meeting. Rumors had been flying around since Mr. Chen's retirement announcement. Standing in front of them, Maria felt butterflies in her stomach, but she took a deep breath and smiled. "I know there's been a lot of talk about changes," she began, looking at the familiar faces around her. These weren't just employees, they were her family. Yes, I'm the new owner, but I'm still me. I'll still be out there on the floor with you, serving tables, helping during rush hour, and staying late when we're short-staffed. She could see the surprise on their faces. The head chef, who'd been at the Grove for 20 years, broke into a wide grin. The bartender who trained her years ago gave her a thumbs up. But not everyone looked convinced. I know some of you might be worried, she continued. Change can be scary, but I learned this business from the ground up, right here with all of you. The Grove is special because we're more than just a restaurant. We're a team. And that's not going to change. Over the next few weeks, Maria stuck to her word. She'd work the morning shift as owner, handling paperwork, meeting with suppliers, and managing the business side. Then she'd change into her server's uniform and work alongside her staff during dinner service. Some customers who knew about the ownership change were confused when they saw her carrying plates and taking orders. Shouldn't you be in the office? They'd ask. Maria would just smile and reply, how can I know what my customers want if I'm not up here talking to them? Her employees started to see that she meant what she said about being part of the team. When the dishwasher called in sick, she rolled up her sleeves and helped wash dishes. During a particularly busy Saturday night, she jumped behind the bar to help mix drinks when they were slammed with orders. But it wasn't always easy. Some nights, she'd get home well past midnight, her feet aching, only to know she had to be up early to meet with the bank or review financial reports. Yet even on the toughest days, she never regretted her decision. The regular customers loved seeing her still working on the floor. They'd share stories about their families, celebrate their special occasions, and treat her just like they always had. That's exactly what she wanted, to keep that personal touch that made the Grove special. One evening, as she was serving a family celebrating their daughter's college acceptance, she overheard one of the newer servers talking to a customer. Yeah, that's our owner over there, he said proudly. She still works shifts with us because she says the best way to run a restaurant is to know every part of it. Maria smiled to herself as she carried plates to another table. She knew her approach was different, maybe even a bit odd in the restaurant business. But the Grove wasn't just any restaurant, and she wasn't just any owner. She was building something unique, a place where everyone, from the dishwashers to the customers, felt like they belonged. Little did she know, her biggest test as both owner and server was just around the corner. It was a busy Friday evening at the Grove, the kind where the buzz of conversation mixed with clinking glasses and the subtle music in the background created that perfect restaurant atmosphere. The waiting area was packed with hungry customers, and every table was full. Maria had just finished helping the kitchen catch up on orders when she noticed a group of 5 well-dressed people walk through the door. The host was handling another customer, so Maria stepped up to greet them with her usual warm smile. Good evening. Welcome to the Grove, she said, reaching for the reservation book. Before she could ask for their name, the woman at the front of the group cut her off. We need a table right now, the woman announced, her voice carrying across the waiting area. She wore expensive jewelry that caught the light, and her designer handbag probably cost more than Maria's first car. We're here for an important business dinner. Maria kept her professional smile in place. Let me check our availability, she said, glancing at the reservation list. I see we're fully booked right now, but I can add you to our waiting list. The wait time is about 45 minutes. The woman's perfectly made-up face twisted into a frown. Do you have any idea who I am? She asked, her voice getting louder. I regularly dine at restaurants twice as exclusive as this one. We can't possibly wait 45 minutes. Other customers in the waiting area started to look uncomfortable. Maria could feel their eyes on her as she tried to handle the situation. I understand your frustration, she said calmly, but we treat all our customers fairly. I'd be happy to serve you drinks at the bar while you wait. Well, I've never been treated like this before, the woman scoffed, looking Maria up and down. I suppose someone in your position wouldn't understand how these things work. In nice restaurants, they know how to accommodate important customers. The comment stung, but Maria had dealt with difficult customers before. What made this different was the way the woman emphasized your position, as if being a server made her somehow less worthy of respect. She could hear the prejudice dripping from every word. One of the woman's friends chimed in, "Maybe we should speak to whoever's in charge. Clearly, you're new here or haven't been properly trained in customer service." Maria took a deep breath, remembering all the lessons Mr. Chen had taught her about handling tough situations. She could feel her hands trembling slightly but kept her voice steady. "I can assure you, I'm very familiar with our policies and procedures." "Oh, I'm sure you are," the woman said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "But I'd like to speak to the owner. I'm certain they would be interested to know how you're turning away valuable customers." The irony of the situation wasn't lost on Maria. Here she was, being talked down to about her own restaurant. She could see some of her regular customers shifting uncomfortably in their seats, a few of them knowing exactly who she was. Her staff were watching too, waiting to see how she would handle this. The woman continued, her voice getting louder with each word. "In fact, I know several restaurant owners in this city. One call from me could really impact your job security. Now, are you going to find us a table, or do I need to make that call?" The restaurant had gotten quieter now, other conversations dying down as people turned to watch the scene unfold. Maria stood there, her server's apron around her waist, facing a choice. She could reveal herself as the owner right away and put this woman in her place, but something told her to wait. Instead, she said, "Ma'am, I understand you're frustrated. If you'd like to speak with the owner, I can arrange that. But first, I want you to understand that at the Grove, we believe every customer deserves the same respect and fair treatment. That includes the people waiting patiently before you arrived." The woman's eyes narrowed, and she opened her mouth to respond. Little did she know, she was about to learn a valuable lesson about judging people based on their appearance or position. The tension in the restaurant was thick enough to cut with a knife. Other diners had stopped eating, their forks hovering midway to their mouths as they watched the scene unfold. The woman's face had turned a shade redder, clearly not used to being stood up to by someone she considered beneath her. "Well," the woman said, raising her voice even louder, making sure everyone could hear her, "I can see the standards of this place have really gone downhill. Back when I used to come here, they knew how to treat their elite customers. I suppose they're letting anyone work here these days." That last comment hung in the air, its meaning crystal clear to everyone within earshot. A few gasps came from nearby tables, and Maria could see her longtime customers shaking their heads in disapproval at the woman's behavior. One of the woman's friends, looking slightly embarrassed, tugged at her sleeve. "Maybe we should try somewhere else," she whispered, but the woman wasn't having it. "No," she declared, pulling out her phone. "I'm going to call my friend who knows all the restaurant owners in this city. We'll see how long you keep your job after I tell them how you've treated us." She started scrolling through her contacts, making a show of it. Maria's hands were shaking, but not from fear. She'd dealt with prejudice before, but never so openly, never so brazenly in her own restaurant. She thought about Mr. Chen, about all the times he handled difficult situations with grace and wisdom. He taught her that sometimes the best response to ugliness was to show people a mirror. "I don't need my job explained to me," Maria said quietly but firmly, her voice carrying in the now silent restaurant. "I've been here for 15 years. I started as a server, worked my way through business school, learned every aspect of running a restaurant. I know exactly what good service means." The woman looked up from her phone, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please, spare me your life story. Just get me the owner right now. I'm done dealing with someone who clearly doesn't understand how fine dining works." That was the moment. Maria reached into her server's apron and pulled out her business card holder. She always kept it there, though she rarely needed to use it. She pulled out a card and held it out to the woman. "You wanted to speak to the owner," Maria said, her voice steady and clear. "Well, here I am." The woman snatched the card, probably expecting to see someone else's name. Her face froze as she read it once, then twice. The card was simple but elegant, reading Maria last name, owner and proprietor, The Grove. This must be a joke," the woman stammered, her perfectly manicured fingers gripping the card so tightly it started to bend. "No joke," Maria replied. "I bought the Grove from Mr. Chen 2 months ago. But I chose to keep working shifts as a server because I believe the best way to run a restaurant is to stay connected to your staff and customers. All of your customers," she added pointedly. The woman's friends had backed away slightly, creating distance between themselves and their now mortified companion. The restaurant remained silent, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. "I'm still happy to add you to our waiting list," Maria continued, her professional tone never wavering. "We have an excellent wine selection at the bar while you wait. Or, if you prefer, I can recommend several other fine restaurants in the area that might have immediate seating available." The woman's face had gone from red to white, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Her phone was now clutched forgotten in her hand, all thoughts of making calls apparently forgotten. The tables around them had erupted in whispered conversations, and Maria could see a few people trying to hide their satisfied smiles behind their napkins. It was a moment of perfect justice, but Maria wasn't done yet. She had one more lesson to teach. Taking a deep breath, Maria gestured toward the bar area. "Let me show you something," she said calmly, her voice carrying the confidence that came from years of experience. The woman, still clutching the business card, followed almost automatically, her previous arrogance replaced by visible discomfort. As they walked, Maria pointed to the photos lining the walls, snapshots of the Grove's history that Mr. Chen had carefully preserved. "See that picture there?" she said, stopping at a faded photograph. "That's from my first day here, 15 years ago. And that one next to it. That's me graduating from business school, all working full-time." The woman's friends hung back, exchanging uncomfortable glances. Other customers pretended not to watch, but their eyes followed the scene with intense interest. "The Grove isn't just a restaurant," Maria continued, her voice warm but firm. "It's a place where people celebrate their most important moments. Proposals, anniversaries, graduations. We're part of their stories. And every single person who walks through that door deserves to be part of that experience." She turned to face the woman directly. "When you judged me based on my uniform, you didn't just insult me. You insulted every hard-working person in the service industry, the same people who make your special evenings possible." The woman shifted her weight from one expensive shoe to the other, her designer bag now held close to her body like a shield. I didn't know," she mumbled, but Maria wasn't finished. "You know what's interesting?" Maria said, gesturing to the busy restaurant around them. "I could have told you I was the owner the moment you walked in. I could have worn a fancy suit and stayed in my office. But I choose to serve tables because it reminds me of something important, that every job has dignity, and every person deserves respect." A slow ripple of applause started from somewhere in the dining room. It spread gradually until most of the restaurant was clapping. The woman's face flushed again, but this time with shame rather than anger. One of her friends stepped forward. "We're very sorry," she said quietly. "We shouldn't have acted that way, owner or not." Maria nodded, acknowledging the apology. Then she did something that surprised everyone. She smiled warmly and said, "Our bar makes an excellent martini, and I know our bartender would be happy to serve you while you wait for a table. That is, if you'd still like to dine with us tonight." The woman looked up, clearly shocked by the offer. Here was the owner she had just insulted, treating her with the very courtesy and professionalism she had failed to show minutes earlier. Yes, we would," the woman said softly, her tone completely different from before. "And I owe you an apology. My behavior was inexcusable." Maria signaled to the bartender, a young man who had watched the whole scene unfold. "Please take good care of our guests," she said, then turned back to the woman. "We'll have a table ready for you in about 30 minutes. I hope you'll enjoy your evening with us." As Maria walked back to her duties, she could hear the whispered conversations, see the approving nods from regular customers. She had just taught everyone in the restaurant a powerful lesson about dignity, respect, and true leadership. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket, a text from Mr. Chen. Somehow, word had already reached him about what happened. His message was simple: "That's my girl. You didn't just protect the restaurant's reputation, you made it stronger." Standing at her service station, Maria smiled to herself. The night was far from over, and there were still tables to serve, customers to care for, and memories to help create. But something has shifted in the restaurant's atmosphere. Every server stood a little taller, worked with a little more pride. Sometimes the best way to change people's minds isn't through confrontation, but through quiet dignity and unwavering professionalism. That was the real lesson of the evening. The next morning, Maria arrived at the Grove earlier than usual. The events of the previous night were still fresh in her mind as she unlocked the front door. The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching dust particles in golden beams as she walked through the quiet dining room. She was surprised to find her entire staff already there, waiting in the kitchen. They'd burst into applause as she walked in. The head chef, who rarely showed emotion, had tears in his eyes as he stepped forward. "Boss," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "what you did last night, that wasn't just about you. That was for all of us." He gestured around the kitchen at the prep cooks, dishwashers, and servers who had come in early just to be there. One of the younger servers spoke up. "My mom's been a waitress for 20 years. When I told her what happened, she cried. She said she wished someone had stood up for her like that." Before Maria could respond, her phone started buzzing. Social media was exploding with the story. A customer had captured the whole incident on video, and it had gone viral overnight. Local news stations were calling, wanting to interview her. Even national papers were reaching out. "You're trending," one of the hostesses exclaimed, showing Maria her phone. The hashtag Restaurant Toner Teaches lesson was spreading like wildfire. People were sharing their own stories of facing discrimination in the service industry. But what touched Maria most were the messages flooding the Grove's social media accounts. They weren't just about the incident. They were about hope, dignity, and respect. "My daughter wants to own a restaurant someday," one comment read. "Thank you for showing her it's possible." Another message came from a retired server. "In 30 years of serving tables, I never saw anyone handle a situation with such grace. You didn't just stand up for yourself, you stood up for all of us." As Maria read through the messages with her staff, the door chimed. It was way too early for customers, but there stood a delivery man with an enormous bouquet of flowers. The card read, "To the owner who serves more than just food, you serve inspiration. From your fellow restaurant owners in Charleston." More surprises followed throughout the day. Regular customers stopped by just to share their support. Other restaurant owners in the city called to express their admiration. Even the local restaurant association reached out, asking Maria to speak at their next meeting about creating inclusive workplace environments. But the most unexpected visitor arrived just before lunch service. It was the woman from the previous night, alone this time, looking much more humble than before. "I couldn't sleep last night," she admitted, standing awkwardly in the entrance. "I kept thinking about how I acted, about all the times I might have treated servers the same way without thinking twice." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I'd like to make a donation to any program that helps people in the restaurant industry pursue their dreams, like you did." Maria smiled, an idea forming in her mind. "Actually," she said, "I've been thinking about starting a mentorship program. Something to help servers and kitchen staff who want to learn the business side of restaurants. The woman's face lit up. "I'm a business consultant," she said. "Maybe I could help." It would be a way to make amends, to turn last night's incident into something positive. By the end of the day, what had started as an uncomfortable confrontation was transforming into something much bigger. Maria sat in her office, still wearing her server's apron, and began drafting plans for the Grove's new mentorship initiative. Her phone buzzed one last time. Another message from Mr. Chen. "Sometimes the best lessons come from our hardest moments. You didn't just handle a difficult situation, you turned it into an opportunity to create positive change." Looking around at her restaurant, at the staff moving with renewed purpose and pride, Maria realized that sometimes life's most powerful messages come served on the most unexpected plates. 1 year had passed since that unforgettable night at the Grove, and the restaurant had transformed in ways Maria never imagined. She stood in the kitchen, watching her newest group of mentees learning the basics of inventory management from her head chef. The mentorship program, born from that confrontation, had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a simple idea had blossomed into a full scholarship program for restaurant workers wanting to advance their careers. Even more surprising was how the local business community had rallied behind it. Remember, Maria heard the chefs saying to the eager group, "Running a restaurant isn't just about cooking great food. It's about understanding numbers, managing people, and most importantly, treating everyone with respect." The woman from that night had kept her word. Not only did she help design the business training program, but she also convinced her corporate colleagues to fund scholarships. Now, twice a year, the Grove welcomed a new batch of service industry workers dreaming of owning their own restaurants someday. Maria walked through the dining room, straightening a tablecloth here, adjusting a flower arrangement there. The walls now held new photos alongside the old ones. Pictures of their first graduating class of mentees, news articles about the program, and a framed copy of the viral post that started it all. "Excuse me," a voice called out. Maria turned to see a teenage girl with her mother, standing nervously by the entrance. "Are you the owner? The one from the video?" Maria smiled warmly. "Yes, that's me. How can I help you?" The girl clutched a notebook to her chest. "I'm doing a school project about people who made a difference in their community. I saw your story online, about how you started as a server and now you're helping others do the same. Could I interview you?" Before Maria could answer, the door chimed again. In walked Mr. Chen, looking tanned and happy from his retirement. He still came by once a week, not to check up on things, but because he missed the energy of the place he'd built. "Perfect timing," Maria said, pulling up chairs for everyone. "Mr. Chen can tell you how this all started." As they sat down, more staff gathered around. They loved hearing the story, even though they'd heard it many times before. The lunch rush wouldn't start for another hour, and these moments of sharing were what made the Grove special. "You see," Mr. Chen began, his eyes twinkling, 15 years ago, this young lady walked in looking for a job. But what I saw was someone who had something special, not just hard work, but heart." The teenage girl scribbled frantically in her notebook as Mr. Chen continued, "Success isn't just about making money. It's about lifting others up as you climb." Maria watched her staff nodding in agreement. Many of them were now enrolled in business classes themselves, inspired by her story. The Grove had become more than just a restaurant. It was a place of transformation. But the real change, Maria added, happened when we decided to turn a negative moment into something positive. That night could have ended with anger, but instead it sparked a movement. The girl looked up from her notebook. "Did you ever see that customer again after she apologized?" Maria smiled. "She's now one of our biggest supporters. She teaches our business management classes twice a month. People can surprise you when you give them a chance to learn and grow." Just then, one of Maria's first mentees rushed in, practically bursting with excitement. "I got it," she exclaimed. "The bank approved my loan. I'm going to open my own place." The room erupted in cheers. This was what it was all about: dreams becoming reality, barriers being broken, and lives being changed. The teenage girl watched with wide eyes as everyone celebrated, understanding she was seeing something special. "You know what the best part is?" Maria said to the girl, who was still writing everything down. "Every person who succeeds in our program goes on to help others. It's like dropping a stone in a pond. The ripples keep spreading." Mr. Chen reached over and patted Maria's hand. "And to think," he said softly, "it all started with a server who wasn't afraid to dream big." On a warm evening, exactly 2 years after the incident that changed everything, the Grove was hosting a special celebration. The restaurant was closed to regular customers, but every table was full. Tonight was graduation night for their 4th class of mentorship program students. The dining room buzzed with excitement. 20 students, all current or former service industry workers, were about to receive their certificates in restaurant management. But these weren't just pieces of paper. They represented countless early mornings, late nights, and determined spirits. Maria stood at the front of the room, still wearing her server's apron over a nice dress. She never gave up working shifts, even after the program's success. "It keeps me grounded," she'd tell anyone who asked. "Look around this room," she began, her voice warm with emotion. 2 years ago, I was just a server who happened to own a restaurant. Now, I see 40 new restaurant owners or managers who started just like me. But more importantly, I see 40 people who understand that success means nothing if we don't help others succeed too." The crowd included past graduates who now own their own restaurants, current students still working their way up, and even some of the city's most prominent business leaders who had become supporters of the program. In the corner, the woman from that fateful night sat quietly. She'd become one of the program's most dedicated mentors, teaching not just business skills, but also lessons about respect and dignity. Her own transformation had become part of the Grove's story. Mr. Chen, who'd flown in specially for the occasion, stepped up to share his thoughts. "When I sold this restaurant to Maria, people asked me why I didn't choose a more experienced buyer. But experience isn't just about years in business. It's about understanding that every person who walks through your door, customer or employee, has a story, has dreams." As he spoke, servers moved through the room with trays of food, all special dishes created by graduates of the program who now had their own successful restaurants. Each plate told a story of determination and success. A young man stood up to share his story. 6 months ago, I was washing dishes and thinking that's all I'd ever do. Now I'm about to open my own food truck. The Grove didn't just teach me about business. It taught me to believe in myself. The local news was there, doing a follow-up story about how one viral moment had sparked a movement. But the real story wasn't about viral videos or social media fame. It was about the quiet revolution happening in kitchens and dining rooms across the city. Maria's phone buzzed with a message. Another restaurant owner in Chicago had seen their story and wanted to start a similar program. This wasn't the first such request. The Grove's mentorship model was being copied in cities across the country. "You know what makes me proudest?" Maria said, looking around at her students. "It's not the success of the program, or even how many new restaurants you'll open. It's that each of you has promised to mentor others, to keep this chain of helping going." She walked over to the wall where the famous video still played on a small screen. That night could have ended very differently. But sometimes life's hardest moments become our biggest opportunities to make things better. The evening ended with a surprise announcement. The city's restaurant association had created a new scholarship fund named after Maria, dedicated to helping service industry workers pursue their dreams of ownership. As the celebration wound down, Maria found herself back in the kitchen, automatically reaching for an apron. Mr. Chen caught her arm, laughing. "Not tonight," he said. "Tonight, you celebrate." But Maria just smiled and tied the apron on. "This is how I celebrate," she replied. "Besides, these dishes won't wash themselves. And so, as the graduates and guests enjoyed their desserts, the owner of the Grove stood at the sink, washing dishes alongside her staff, teaching one final lesson about true leadership, that no job is beneath you when you understand the dignity of work. The Grove had become more than just a restaurant. It was a beacon of hope, a place where dreams took root and grew. And at its heart was a simple truth. Sometimes the most powerful changes start with a single moment of standing up for what's right. Remember, Maria called out to her students as they left that night, success isn't about reaching the top. It's about how many people you bring up with you.